Only 3 weeks ago, I stood in this place to read the Führer's proclamation on the 10th anniversary of the seizure of power, and to speak to you and to the German people. The crisis we now face on the Eastern Front was at its height. In the midst of the hard misfortunes the nation faced in the battle on the Volga, we gathered together in a mass meeting on the 30th of January to display our unity, our unanimity, and our strong will to overcome the difficulties we faced in the 4th year of the war. It was a moving experience for me, and probably also for all of you, to be bound by radio with the last heroic fighters in Stalingrad during our powerful meeting here in the Sportpalast. They radioed to us that they had heard the Führer's proclamation, and perhaps for the last time in their lives, joined book coverers in raising their hands to sing the national anthems. What an example German soldiers have set in this great age, and what an obligation it puts on us all, particularly the entire German homeland. Stalingrad was and is fate's great alarm call to the German nation, a nation that has the strength to survive and overcome such a disaster. Even to draw from it additional strength is unbeatable. In my speech to you and the German people, I shall remember the heroes of Stalingrad who put me and all of us under a deep obligation. I do not know how many millions of people are listening to me over the radio tonight, at home and at the front. I want to speak to all of you from the depths of my heart to the depths of yours. I believe that the entire German people has a passionate interest in what I have to say tonight. I will therefore speak with holy seriousness and openness as the hour demands. The German people, raised, educated, and disciplined by National Socialism, can bear the whole truth. It knows the gravity of the situation, and its leadership can therefore demand the necessary hard measures. Yes, even the hardest measures. We Germans are armed against weakness and uncertainty. The blows and misfortunes of the war only give us additional strength, firm resolve, and a spiritual and fighting will to overcome all difficulties and obstacles with revolutionary elan. Now is not the time to ask how it all happened. That can wait until later, when the German people and the whole world will learn the full truth about the misfortune of the past weeks and its deep and fateful significance. The heroic sacrifices of heroism of our soldiers in Stalingrad has had vast historical significance for the whole Eastern Front. It was not in vain. The future will make clear why. When I jump over the past to look ahead, I do it intentionally. The time is short. There is no time for fruitless debates. We must act immediately, thoroughly, and decisively, as has always been the National Socialist way. The movement has, from its beginning, acted in that way to master the many crises it faced and overcame. The National Socialist state also acted decisively when faced by a threat. We are not like the ostrich that sticks its head in the sand so as not to see danger. We are brave enough to look danger in the face, to coolly and ruthlessly take its measure, then act decisively with our heads held high. Both as a movement and as a nation, we have always been at our best when we needed fanatic, determined wills to overcome and eliminate danger, or a strength of character sufficient to overcome every obstacle, or bitter determination to reach our goal, or an iron heart capable of withstanding every internal and external battle. So it will be today. My task is to give you an unvarnished picture of the situation and to draw the hard conclusions that will guide the actions of the German government, but also of the German people. We face a serious military challenge in the East. The crisis is at the moment a broad one, similar but not identical in many ways to that of the previous winter. Later we will discuss the causes. Now we must accept things as they are and discover and apply the ways and means to turn things again in our favor. There is no point in disputing the seriousness of the situation. I do not want to give you a false impression of the situation that could lead to false conclusions, perhaps giving the German people a false sense of security that is altogether inappropriate in the present situation. The storm raging against our venerable continent from the steppes this winter overshadows all previous human and historical experience. The German army and its allies are the only possible defense. In his proclamation on 30th of January, the Führer asked in a grave and compelling way what would have become of Germany and Europe if, on 30th January 1933, a bourgeois or democratic government had taken power instead of the National Socialists. What dangers would have followed faster than we could then have suspected, and what powers of defense would we have had to meet them? 10 years of National Socialism have been enough to make plain to the German people the seriousness of the danger posed by Bolshevism from the East. Now one can understand why we spoke so often of the fight against Bolshevism at our Nuremberg Party rallies. We raised our voices in warning to our German people and the world, hoping to awaken Western humanity from the paralysis of will and spirit into which it had fallen. We tried to open their eyes to the horrible danger from Eastern Bolshevism, which had subjected a nation of nearly 200 million people to the terror of the Jews and was preparing an aggressive war against Europe. When the Führer ordered the army to attack the East on 22nd June 1941, we all knew that this would be the decisive battle of this great struggle. We knew the dangers and difficulties, but we also knew that dangers and difficulties always grow over time. They never diminish. It was 2 minutes before midnight. Waiting any longer could easily have led to the destruction of the Reich and a total Bolshevization of the European continent. It is understandable that as a result of broad concealment and misleading actions by the Bolshevist government, we did not properly evaluate the Soviet Union's war potential. Only now do we see its true scale. That is why the battle our soldiers face in the East exceeds in its hardness, dangers, and difficulties all human imagining. It demands our full national strength. This is a threat to the Reich and to the European continent that casts all previous dangers into the shadows. If we fail, we will have failed our historic mission. Everything we have built and done in the past pales in the face of this gigantic task that the German army directly and the German people less directly face. I speak first to the world and proclaim 3 theses regarding our fight against the Bolshevist danger in the East. This first thesis: were the German army not in a position to break the danger from the East, the Reich would fall to Bolshevism and all Europe shortly afterwards. Second, the German army, the German people and their allies alone have the strength to save Europe from this threat. Third, danger faces us. We must act quickly and decisively, or it will be too late. I turn to the first thesis. Bolshevism has always proclaimed its goal openly: to bring revolution not only to Europe, but to the entire world and plunge it into Bolshevist chaos. This goal has been evident from the beginning of the Bolshevist Soviet Union and has been the ideological and practical goal of the Kremlin's policies. Clearly, the nearer Stalin and the other Soviet leaders believe they are to realizing their world-destroying objectives, the more they attempt to hide and conceal them. We cannot be fooled. We are not like those timid souls who wait like the hypnotized rabbit until the serpent devours them. We prefer to recognize the danger in good time and take effective action. We see through not only the ideology of Bolshevism, but also its practice, for we had great success with that in our domestic struggles. The Kremlin cannot deceive us. We had 14 years of our struggle for power and 10 years thereafter to unmask its intentions and its infamous deceptions. The goal of Bolshevism is Jewish world revolution. They want to bring chaos to the Reich and Europe, using the resulting hopelessness and desperation to establish their international Bolshevist concealed capitalist tyranny. I do not need to say what that would mean for the German people. A Bolshevization of the Reich would mean the liquidation of our entire intelligentsia and leadership, and the descent of our workers into Bolshevist Jewish slavery. In Moscow, they find workers for forced labor battalions in the Siberian tundra, as the Führer said in his proclamation on 30th of January. The revolt of the steppes is readying itself at the front, and the storm from the east that breaks against our lines daily in increasing strength is nothing other than a repetition of the historical devastation that has so often in the past endangered our part of the world. That is a direct threat to the existence of every European power. No one should believe that Bolshevism would stop at the borders of the Reich were it to be victorious. The goal of its aggressive policies and wars is the Bolshevization of every land and people in the world. In the face of such undeniable intentions, we are not impressed by paper declarations from the Kremlin or guarantees from London or Washington. We know that we are dealing in the East with an infernal political devilishness that does not recognize the norms governing relations between people and nations. When, for example, the English Lord Beaverbrook says that Europe must be given over to the Soviets, or when the leading American Jewish journalist Brown cynically adds that a Bolshevization of Europe might solve all of the continent's problems, we know what they have in mind. The European powers are facing the most critical question. The West is in danger. It makes no difference whether or not their governments and intellectuals realize it or not. The German people, in any event, is unwilling to bow to this danger.